At ESPN, we certainly think the audience buying future is upon us. And it's not just in digital where it's been present for some time. We are now seeing it sort of rapidly approaching us in the form of syndicated data notions within linear television. And I think we're seeing the beginnings of being able to actually use first and third party data in a linear television framework. So true addressable television, if you will. We're certainly sort of taking those notions and broadening them out beyond ESPN through the Walt Disney Company Media Networks groups in general, and thinking about how not only does our incredibly powerful first-party sports fan database work with those notions, but more broadly, how do our guests of the Walt Disney Company become part of that audience selling notion? At ESPN, I think we've been sort of a multimodal platform for a very long time. I think what's changed is now not only do we have huge scale, whether you look at linear, OTT, mobile, digital, but we can now target not only across the digital frameworks, which have been targetable for some time. We are introducing linear optimization into our linear networks. And I think over the next, I'll call it 12 to 18 months, we'll really start seeing the insertion of first and third party data into our linear networks in a very, very, I think, forward-looking way. And that is going to change, I believe, how television is given attribution for the things that it does, which today digital gets an outsized amount of attribution for. We are now seeing advertisers begin to become comfortable with the fact that they can come to us and ask us for the ability to take their information and insert it eventually into household and individual levels on the linear side. We're experimenting now with what linear optimization looks like, and that's the beginnings of those pieces. But as you start working with sort of the frameworks for linear, with the MVPDs, with the DMVPDs, and all those who provide the last mile to us, there is now a new ability for us to think about what it means to actually speak one-to-one across the linear framework. From our point of view, we're very advertiser focused in terms of thinking about what data will be the most useful. So certainly we have first party data that's very powerful at ESPN and the Walt Disney Company more broadly. In addition, we've been using syndicated data sets for a long time, but as we get the ability in linear to really focus on the individual and household level, we can start using advertiser first and third party data within our own systems. And I think that's where it begins to get really, really exciting.
What do you see as the sort of the opportunities or maybe the challenges in sort of this new advanced world for the buyers?
I think there are two things that are going to happen. One, the power of the Walt Disney Company as a platform, which includes ESPN, includes ABC, includes our other networks within it. We have a vast ability to talk to individual consumers, guests, and fans in a way that perhaps nobody else can. And the context and the power of that context is very important. It's very relevant. Having said that, we are in the early stages, I believe, of buyers being able to come to us and say, we want to do this on an audience basis. So I would say that for the next 12 months, we are in experimental phase. A lot of us are doing work with advertisers and with agencies and holding companies around how can we best do this and actually look at the value it produces. Once we get past that and the systems are able to do this at scale, that's when the whole game changes. I think there's a variety of data sources we're looking and experimenting with. Location is very interesting. Certainly looking at data that allows us to understand what's happening in the living room is very interesting. We have to be very careful with these. At Disney and at ESPN, we value sort of our brand reputation probably more than any other large media organization. We care very deeply what our guests and fans think. And the one thing we don't want them to feel is that they're violating their privacy in any way. So as we think about the line between what is acceptable and what is possible, we will often do what we think is right? And that limits us in some ways, but also allows us to experiment with things that we think are really interesting. I think live sports is the last bastion of communal viewing, right? And one of the amazing things we found is how powerfully our fans feel connected, not only to the brand, but to what we bring to them in terms of communal viewing. And that encompasses all the platforms that we allow them to connect through. And we want to give them more and more options because we know consumers are looking for more and more ways to consume that sport. They want to be able to do it. They want to be able to talk about it. They want to be able to do it in real time, whether that's on a lean back sort of television mode, on their mobile, via their OTT device. They want to have all those options available to them. Our CEO, Bob Iger, last year announced that we're going to put out a direct streaming service called ESPN Plus. We're adding even more content that makes our sort of super sports fans get access to things they'd never gotten before in a almost completely new way. We're very excited about that. And it just adds another, we think, sort of arrow into our pantheon of tools that allows the sports fan to get what they want when they need it in real time and share it as they need to.
What do you see as important to develop in terms of the technology and vendor world?
That's a great question. And I think part of it is cooperation around data, an understanding of how data can become mobile as much as possible. I think the other piece of that coin is allowing consumers to have control over what pieces of their data is shared and allowing for an open value exchange. I think technologies like blockchain are very early stage, but very interesting in terms of what we can do around data sharing, in terms of making the actual business of advertising much easier. There's really exciting things that can come there. In addition, sort of new ways to access content, new ways to access it via their phone or elsewhere. That, in terms of syndication and distribution, from what some would consider the greatest producers of content in the world, we care very deeply about new ways to make it easy for you as a sports fan, for you as a media consumer, to actually access what you need whenever you need it, and do it in an experience that feels magical.